Hello YouTube, bro. My name is Nicholas Montez and you're watching my YouTube channel, The Teenage Movie Critic. And welcome back to another YouTube channel, everybody. I'm so excited to have you all back together again. And in today's video, we're going to be doing a celebration of cinema review for the classic comic book movie, Spider-Man 2. So last year I reviewed the first Spider-Man and a couple of other Spider-Man films, but I never actually reviewed Spider-Man 2, mainly because when I started out this series, I just planned to review movies that I absolutely love. And Spider-Man 2, as I've thought about it and rewatched it last night, I kind of started to think, maybe this movie is actually really good after all. I've always loved it, but I never absolutely, was crazy about it like other people. But let's go ahead and dive into Spider-Man 2. And easily the best thing about this movie is, so first off, thing I gotta say, the reason why I didn't review Spider-Man 2 with the original Spider-Man is because while I do love both films, I love one more than the other, and the first Spider-Man means a whole another deal to me than the Spider-Man 2 does, but Spider-Man 2 is still a great film. As for me, I personally love the way they continued the story of this movie, where the first film was literally the origin of our character and how does that continue his story. This film shows us that Peter is having trouble being Spider-Man, being the hero that everybody loves, but also doing stuff for a job, taking pictures of Spider-Man, but nobody seems to like Spider-Man anymore because Jonah has turned the city against him. He can't get a girlfriend, he can't make it to his birthday party on time, and him being Spider-Man affects the way that his relationships with his family, his friends, his aunt, his trying to get a girlfriend. And even just with that, the whole relationship with Peter and MJ, which if you really think about it, besides it being a superhero story, this trilogy feels like more of a love story, if you really think about it. Because the whole thing of Peter's thing, in this whole trilogy, is he's trying to be with MJ, but he can't because he's Spider-Man. That's what was established in the first movie, as he has to push her away because he can't let people take that risk, because Norman just died, my uncle died because I didn't do anything, and I had Norman died because I fought him, and people that I loved were hurt, and so I can't let that happen again. And it sets throughout all this where Peter, because of this, MJ starting to kind of move on and wanting to marry this other guy, and when Peter gets his powers taken away, well, not taken away, but when he loses his powers and he becomes a normal guy, he realizes being a normal guy won't get you to what you want, which I feel like has a little bit of problem once we get to the end of the movie. But then also, even when he realizes he was different and she didn't listen, she now realizes, I think I want him. I don't really want this guy. And when she finally finds out why Peter's been doing all of this and why he's been pushing her away, she finally says to him, I get why we can't be together, but can you at least let me make the decision for myself? I know there'll be risks, but I want to take those risks with you. And it's such a great love story. That's a green flag right there. If a girl actually wants to take the risks with you, that is just an easy easy green flag right there. And so I just really love the story of this movie, especially with the love story of Peter and MJ. Easily the best usage of that, and I was just so moved by it. Plus, also Sam Raimi's directing and the horror style, the shots, they're all choreographed very well. But we'll talk more about all that stuff in the other sections of the video. So let's move on to the other great things.
Drop that.
Next up, we have the characters, and I think the characters in this movie, there are, all of course, great. Obviously, Tobey Maguire is Peter Parker and Spider-Man. He's so great as this version of the character. all the little quirks and everything, all the little awkwardness of it. It's great. MJ, this might be the best usage of MJ in all three films. Harry, I feel like they didn't really know what to do with him, so they basically just made him a guy that's angry for his father's death, which is understandable, but I just feel like he's getting drunk. He had this thing with Otto, and especially in the way it plays towards the third act, I just don't really like it, because he just lets Peter go, but then it sets up... I wish we had a little bit more of an entertaining story to do with him. I guess one other... I also love the stuff they do with Aunt May. I actually didn't realize Aunt May moved to a new house. I didn't realize that she didn't pay her rent for the month, so she moved out, and she moved to another house. I didn't notice... I didn't realize that when Peter went to go see Aunt May in Spider-Man 3, that it was a different house. I didn't realize that. And maybe that's why... Maybe that's why the Spider-Man 3 doesn't really look, the New York doesn't look as, you know, realistic as much, but that's just me, because in the houses and the outside parts, it looks a lot more realistic. When it comes to Aunt May, I just really loved, you know, the inspirational stuff as she's dealing with Ben's death. Even the scene where Peter tells Aunt May of what really happened to Uncle Ben is some of the most heartbreaking stuff. But then she learns to forgive him. And I really love that stuff. Jonah Jameson, he's great in the film. Obviously one of the best new characters, Doc Ock, played by Alfred Molina. He's a really good Spider-Man villain. I personally really like that we get to learn a little bit about him, that we get to spend time with him, that we learn that he has a wife, and that he's in love. He's a scientist that is run by ambition, not just by greed or evilness. And you can see how the chip in his neck turned him evil, and so the arms were now controlling him. It's an interesting take on the evil scientist gone wrong. So I actually really enjoyed this character, and the way that they play it out in the third act of the film, I personally really love it. So just the way they do and also another great thing about this movie with the characters, Sam Raimi just casted a lot of different like little characters in here. The rent guy, the most memeable character of all. He's so funny. He's so enrichment, like, and even his daughter, it's so kind. Like the scene with the cake, it's so cool. It's so good. The guy, you might wanna, can I help you? Like he just waits for him to tie everything and then talks to him. Like they cast so many people. It's like all these little characters. I'm like, this is so cool. This is so funny, but it works. It feels like Sam Raimi, but it also it feels kind of like Spider-Man. It feels like Spider-Man. So, and it's like it was made for Spider-Man, for this specific franchise. So yeah, I love the way they handled it. I love the way they handled it, the main characters, but also just the little actor cameos and all. That was really fun. Next up, we're going to talk about the action. Now, this movie is important with the action because I have a bit of thoughts on it. Because on the one hand, the action in this movie is groundbreaking. I would say it's definitely better than the action in this movie is definitely better than the first film. Mainly because you get a lot more action. It also looks a lot better. While the first film, it has incredible swinging sequences, but there's not really like an action sequence I go back and I'm like, this is great. I guess maybe the Green Goblin fight in the forest, but not much. In the abandoned hospital or whatever. That's cool because it's really brutal, but it's not my favorite. With this movie, I think the way that they handle the action, it's also handled through story. The big example of this is the train fight, where it starts out with Spider-Man and Doc Ock fighting on the clock tower, and then they fall on the train, and you know, they're passing by like ledges and stuff, and Spider-Man's like dodging and everything. But then you have the train breaking, and Spider-Man has to do whatever he can to stop this train from running off that track. And he realizes two webs won't work, so he has to shoot as many webs as he can until it stops. And then it stops. He's exhausted, but then the people in the train pull him back as one of their own. And Peter realizes, wait, people are seeing my face. My mask is off. I'm in big trouble. But then the people are like, it's all right, because sure, you haven't been here for a while, but you have always been one of our own. You have saved us. Some people don't like him, but at the end of the day, you are our hero. You are our savior. And it's such a great arc, and then the people decide to protect him when Doc Ock comes back. Such a great little thing to do. Here's the tricky one on that scene, though, in that I think the plot of this scene, while it is fantastic, while the scene of it as a whole is fantastic, I think the plot of it is a little bit weird. Because you actually think of it. Both of our characters are fighting for different reasons. Spider-Man is trying to fight Doc Ock so he can defeat him and tell him where MJ is. Doc Ock is trying to fight Spider-Man so he can knock him out, bring him back to Harry so Harry can kill him, and he can get the Tritium. So you got two plot lines, and they're not, when you actually think about the plot, it's not really all that interesting. Certain other movies I feel like have actually been able to handle the plot, like Infinity War. Like, you care about the plot because you don't want the heroes to lose, and you want Thanos to lose so he won't snap his fingers and get that time stone. And then even as you get into like the third act, and we're fighting this, and we're like trying to stop the sun from erupting New York, it's like there's not even a lot of action in there. We're just punching each other in the water, and that's it. Like, there's not a lot of action. Like, it's kind of weird. I understand it's character growth, but you could have mixed in both action and human emotions in the mix. If I'm being honest, I would actually say the better action sequence for me is actually the bank fight, because you get a lot of the cool action scenes with like Spider-Man using bags of money to hit Doc Ock, or even the guy that's trying to get the money, he's like, ow! He's like, ow! And then they're like fighting on the rooftop, and then Doc Ock literally gets Aunt May. And this is just crazy, as like he's trying to fight Doc Ock but also save Aunt May. It's just incredible. So yeah, I kind of like that fight a lot more, even though I do like them both. But the train fight easily comes to a close second. They're both, the fights in the action in this movie is still great. And the final thing to talk about with this movie is the score, and as well as the emotional stuff. Well, I guess that can kind of count in the story, but whatever. The score in this movie, once again, is still fantastic. Possibly a little bit better than the first one, but I love the score to the original Spider-Man so much. This one, I think, in the opening credits, it just has that spunk, like, it's great. So that is pretty much my review for Spider-Man 2. I really don't have much else to say. Once again, it is a great sequel to one of my favorite films growing up, as well as one of my favorite films ever made. The original Spider-Man is like my top 10 favorite movies of all time. So this was a very important film to watch. And really, I like all the Spider-Man movies. Even the bad ones, like the weaker ones, like Amazing Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3. I still enjoy them, even though they have some problems. Overall, that is my thoughts on Spider-Man 2. Thank you guys for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye. Pizza time.